Our third session. It's a really interesting topic and my favorite. It's clinical validation of AI, that is artificial intelligence. And I welcome you all to this enlightening panel discussion, a pivotal exploration into the dynamic realm where healthcare and artificial intelligence intersect. Today we gather to unravel the intricacies surrounding the clinical validation of AI, a topic that resonates deeply in our pursuit of innovative, effective, and ethically sound healthcare solutions. In this era of accelerated technological advancements, the integration of artificial intelligence into clinical practice holds immense promise. We all know that the potential of AI is huge, but so are the dangers. By far, the greatest danger of AI is that people conclude too early that they know it, they understand it, and it's 100% correct. So we are going to know about all of it, about AI and healthcare in this session. We have the privilege of hearing from a distinguished panel of experts who are at the forefront of the transformative intersection. First of all, I would like to welcome our session chair, Dr. Vasanth Venugopal, CMO, Carpal.ai. Please welcome him with a huge round of applause. I would now want to invite the other panelist, Dr. Rajiv Pathni, founder and director of Praar Consulting. Please welcome him with a huge round of applause.
I'm just seeing some people leaving. I promise this session is going to be very interesting. Please stay back.
Dr. Harpreet Singh, Scientist and Chief Data Officer, Indian Council of Medical Research. I request you all to please call all of your friends back. Because this is going to be a really good, interesting panel discussion, and I really don't want you all to miss it. You can just WhatsApp in sometime, I think. That's pretty good. Okay, now next all we have Dr. Devasenathipathy Kandasamy, Professor of All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Next off we have Dr. Ambika Seth, MD Radiology, Medical Director, Cancer Screening Group, Lunit. I welcome you all. We will now begin with our session.
Thank you for the introductions. Thank you for the invitation. So this is the last session, and there is a good thing about being last is that the bad thing is people leave, right? The good thing is whoever stays back can take it long, right? So we have the liberty to take this session as far as it goes and keep the discussion running. So I wanted to say that we have put together a diverse panel with people representing different groups. That's not true. So if you look at the panel, 3 of the members are radiologists. So one of the kind of reasons for that is AI today is showing tremendous progress and promises in the field of radiologists. So it's kind of imbalanced towards radiology representation. Dr. Deva is a very good friend. He's a professor at All India Institute of AIMS. My advantage is that I can say his full name with the correct pronunciation as Devasenathipathy Kandasamy. So that's it. And he's doing a lot of good work at AIMS in the field of AI. He will talk about that in a while. And we have Dr. Rajiv. He's a veteran. He's alumnus of AFMC. He has done Master of Health Administration from AIMS, worked in Army, Israel, Middle East. I think he has worked in 5 different countries and he can speak 15 different languages. And he's going to bring in the health administration perspective to the panel. And we also honored to have Dr. Harpreet Singh. He has done his PhD from JNU and postdoc from Cornell University. He is presently the scientist and leads the AI cell at ICMR. And he's going to talk about several new initiatives that ICMR is doing. And finally, we have Dr. Ambika Seth. She was trained to be a radiologist like me, but she took an alternate career path. Now she works with, I think, world's one of the topmost AI companies called Lunit. She is the medical director for the cancer program at Lunit. So welcome you all. Thank you for being part of this session. So the session is kind of framed slightly and kind of differently from the session before. All of us are going to take 5-6 minutes in the beginning to talk about what we think when we hear the term clinical validation, what comes to our mind, and what has been our experiences validating emerging technologies. And after that brief kind of perspectives, we are going to have a moderated Q&A. I have put together some interesting questions to ask to each one of the panelists, and then we'll open it for the audience to take any questions. So yeah, great. So be ready with your questions at the end. We have a good amount of 15 minutes to take questions from the audience. First, I will go first. Probably I'll set the context about validation, and then the other panelists will follow. I think I forgot to introduce myself. Sorry about that. So my name is Vasanth. So I was trained to be a radiologist. I was practicing radiology. I was teaching at Maulana Azad Medical College. Then when this deep learning revolution started, in fact, to be true, I don't know how many of you have seen the interview by Jeffrey Hinton. So there is a video on YouTube. Just go and see. About 5 years back, Jeffrey Hinton was at a hospital. He was saying that, at the hospital, to the hospital administrators, that they should stop training radiologists way back in 2018, because at that point of time he thought that 5 years from then AI will be reading images much better than radiologists, and there will be no need for radiologists in any hospital. So I think it's 6 years since then. No radiologist has lost the job except for me, right? I have some other radiologists took up my job because I thought that it's better to work with AI and quit radiology. So cool. So the session was about emerging technologies. All of you know that there are a couple of interesting technologies in different fields that are coming up, including AI, wearable technology and sensors. We heard about it in the last session, robotics and automation, virtual reality and augmented reality, which is being used in medical education a lot, cloud computing, blockchain, and big data. So we are not going to focus on much on this, just focusing on AI for this session. So the word validation is a very interesting word because it has different kind of meaning to different people. If you go to a data scientist, right, tell them we are going to validate your algorithm. So what would they think is that, does that algorithm work the way I designed it to be? They won't care about the outcomes, the data sources, where it is tested. They just want to be kind of very rule-based. Whatever is their objective, whatever is their expectation, it should do that. You go to a statistician, or maybe someone who is running a researcher. They would have a very robust, very strict statistical principles to do the validation, right? There won't be any compromise on practicality of the validation process. But you talk to a clinician, what it literally matters to them is, does it really help, right? Validating a solution from the perspective of being useful in their clinical workflow is what it matters. So that's why it's a very, very important term, but has different meanings, different people understand it differently. Why do we need validation? It's very simple. As doctors, the first thing we are taught is do no harm, right? If you can't benefit, that's fine, but we shouldn't be doing any harm. So it's very important that any new technological intervention, if it doesn't help, it shouldn't do harm. So that's the first thing. It should be very safe. You have to prove the safety. Number two, to build trust in the healthcare industry. There are a lot of skepticism in the industry around the new technologies because of the hype cycle that it has gone through. So a robust validation process builds trust in that. And it also helps practitioners, clinicians using those technologies to make informed decision, because there will be certain conditions in which the technology would work. There will be certain outlier conditions in which it may not be work. To explore those things, you need to be doing a proper validation study, and it's also a requirement for complying with the regulatory requirements, be it FDA, our own CDSO or CE. All of them have their own rules for approving a solution. You have to do a validation study to prove them. And the validation process is actually broadly is three types: preclinical or in lab validation. Clinical is in field validation. Post-market is what happens after the solution is used in the clinical practice. How does it behave? It's part of the marketing also. Some people call it as post-market validation, but we call it as monitoring. There are just 5 basic rules of clinical validation. Any validation process start with value and build upon the strong evidence that the preclinical validation has given you, right? So that's where you should start. Understand the designs of different clinical validation processes, right? It could be a retrospective design, case control study, outcome monitoring study. You have to be very well aware of the different designs, and you have to apply the right design to the right validation process. Be flexible, and be aware that if a hospital is not cooperating for clinical validation of emerging technology, it's not because they are not interested, it's because they are very, very resource poor, right? They are already busy in their clinical practice. They won't have time to spend upon for validating your solution. Make sure you provide the right set of tools to the clinicians, make it easy for them. Number 2, with any new solution, don't do a lot of change. Don't try to radically change the existing workflow. It's not going to happen. So the AI in healthcare, we all know that is making tremendous progress. The future is very, very promising, right? All of you know that. Coming very specifically to radiology, what has happened in the past 5 years is there are several new solutions that have come up. Close to 300 solutions are now FDA approved. 500 to 600 solutions have approval by the European body. So much of I would say chaotic environment there. How does this translate into clinical practice? How does it reach the clinician? This is a challenge that needs to be solved. If the way we think of radiology, the impact of AI on radiology is what has happened to lab medicine, right? If you go to a lab, any fully automated lab, this picture here is showing the world's largest lab in Brazil. It's a group called DASA. They do several thousands of studies on a day, and many of them are automated reports, just verified and signed by pathologists. That's what's going to happen to radiology in the coming years, right? It's going to be, there are today several solutions that can intersect in each of the different workflow aspects of radiology department and radically improve the productivity of radiologists. But there needs to be, as I said previously, there are a lot of solutions there. It's very confusing, very chaotic. Someone needs to kind of bring them all, make it easy for clinicians to access them, test them, and then use them in their clinical practice. That's what we are doing at Carpal. So I serve as a Chief Medical Officer by Carpal. We have built a platform, single layer, wherein we have integrated multiple different AI solutions from different parts of the world. Today we have close to 110 applications from 50 different companies from across the globe onto a single platform, and it provided to radiologists for them to easy to test and validate and use it in their clinical practice. So that's what we do. And these are some of the AI companies. On the left side, you see the AI companies that we work with. On the right side is the hospital systems that are using our platform. We are a truly global platform present in 5 different geographies. And these are some of the statistical tool sets that are available in the platform, which makes it easy for a radiologist to quickly validate an AI solution. We also have solutions for monitoring after deployment, right? Once you have done a validation, when you have proven value, when you're using it in clinical practice, how do you monitor it continuously without a break and alert it before it reaches the clinician? We also have built in some monitoring pipelines. I'll talk about it during the session. So I just want to set the context. So thank you. We also do a lot of research, right? We have, as a group, has published quite extensively. In fact, our last paper was with Andrew Ng. So we worked with the Stanford group. And yeah, thank you. to briefly share his perspectives about what he thinks validation is.
Thanks, Vasanth.
We're just importing the slides. I'm inviting Dr. Harpreet Singh to share his perspectives till we get those slides up and there.
Thank you, Dr. Vasanth, and thank you, Triple IT, Dr. Tab, and Dr. Gaur for inviting me here. So I would say very rarely I see so young crowd, so young colleagues. Most of these meetings are with the people of my age that I attend. So I'll be very open, you can interrupt anytime. I'll be discussing with you a couple of programs which ICMR has started which are related to validating AI-based applications. So there are, as Dr. Vasanth mentioned, there are many aspects of AI validation. So we are focusing at ICMR primarily on improving the quality of data and developing reference data sets. We call it gold standard data sets for developing better AI applications. So just 2 slides I'll be on about ICMR and about the division I'm working in. ICMR, most of you must be knowing, but for the larger benefit, is one of the oldest and premier medical research funding agency in India. I proudly say we are 112-year-old organization, and we do research across the country through 2 programs, intramural program and extramural research programs. Intramural, we have 27 thematic research institutes all across India, focusing on different aspects of diseases and health. We have institute on occupational health, we have institute on cancer, we have institute on tuberculosis, leprosy, enteric diseases, so almost all the diseases of national importance. In addition to that, we also fund extramural research programs to various medical colleges, medical research institutions like yours, Triple IT. So we fund a lot of research in these institutions. Next slide is about the division. So this probably will take your interest because we are working with the vision of making accessible health research data for improved public health outcomes. So by accessible, I means the data set should be available as well as should be readable both by the machine as well as by human. So you all must be aware of this FAIR principle. So I have added 1A to that. So it is findability, availability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability. So this one extra A is important from Indian prospect because many a times the data is available on internet, but it is not accessible. The roadmap that we are thinking and we are working in our division is through structured data generation, responsible data sharing, and then efficient algorithms and secure applications. So these are the 3 steps that we are working on. Now, setting the context, because whenever you heard the term digital health, the first thing that comes in mind is electronic health records. So it is not the entire ecosystem, or the second term that you hear is ecosystem. So EHR is not the complete ecosystem of digital health. There are 2 distinct components, and I think you as a young engineer should understand that. First component is digital health services, care and delivery ecosystem, which deals with the electronic hospital records, hospital information systems. The major difference between digital services, care and delivery and health research ecosystem is that in health research ecosystem, the data is collected with specific objective. There are strict inclusion-exclusion criteria, and the people who monitor this collection of this data, they are quite concerned about it, so the quality of data is also high. But the challenge is there are a lot of investigators. It is not just one hospital who is collecting data, so there is a lot of diversity. Many a times we don't use the standards in the research ecosystem, hence the interoperability is a very big challenge. So there we are working towards it, and I'll come in the next slide. So by ecosystem, health research data ecosystem I mean the data sources, the ecosystem of data sources which are collected as a part of the research projects. surveys, surveillances, cohorts, registries. So all these are part of health research data ecosystem. Stakeholders are, we have researchers, policymakers, data professionals, and the participants who participate on those surveys. And the functionally side, we have research studies, policies, guidelines, data systems, secondary data sources, and knowledge bases. Advantages, obviously, it is clear that it is going to enhance research efficiency and effectiveness, promotion of collaborative research, and data-driven public health policies and decisions, which is absolutely required. Take it from me, this policy word is a very dry word, but it is required. It is absolutely required. The challenges that we face for establishing this health research data ecosystem are diversity in data formats and platforms, in health, particularly in health research data ecosystem, interoperability and system-to-system communication, which I have been witnessing this challenge because I have been working with various doctors and various research organizations. This is one of the major challenge. Access to the data generated by programs and projects. Handling of PIIs, personal information identifiers, it is absolutely not available in the research data ecosystem. PIIs are collected just like that. And then the second thing is comprehensive policy on the research data management. At ICMR, we are working on it. Streamlining the procedural bottlenecks in data sharing by researchers. Many a times the data is available on the desktops, on the disks of the researchers, and it is never available to other researchers. And then an intelligent data analytics platform on a robust data, analytics on a robust data platform. Government of India is also very serious about it. These two documents I have taken just an example, but there are a number of other documents which are available in public domain, which talks about establishing district level electronic databases of information, then disease registries, federated integrated health information architecture, metadata data standardization. So a lot of documents are available and work has also started in this area. At ICMR, I'll be in the next 4 slides, I'll be talking about 4 initiatives that we have taken. First is the strategic vision document 2030, which is available on the internet. You can download ICMR strategic vision document. The second chapter of this document talks about developing and implementing an ICMR policy for sharing and access of health biomedical research data. Set up disease-specific thematic repositories, and then from the ICMR side, initiating programs so that these repositories can be utilized by the researchers. Second important, the first document is published and available on internet, and we are working on it with the timelines. So the first objective was policy. So when we started developing this data sharing and access policy, we came up that there are other organizations which also have developed. But the aspect that was missing was a comprehensive policy of health research data management. So we started developing that policy because if you look at funding agencies across the world, they ask for a data management plan right in the beginning when the proposal is submitted. But in India, very few agencies, and to my knowledge, no agency is asking for a data management plan. So in this document, we have put up a data management plan. We have put up an authorized data repository architecture, federated architecture for data storage, because most of the time funding agencies says that all data should come to them. All data should come to the funding agency. So in this policy, we have taken away that arena that will be keeping all the data. We have put up that. And then we have emphasized very strongly on data standardization, uniformity, synergy, and dissemination. So this entire policy focuses on data planning, data collection, data management, storage, dissemination, visualization. So all in totality, it is a comprehensive policy on health research data management. Then we have also started working on developing an integrated research data platform. So this project we started in 3 phases. First phase we have already completed. From each of the ICMR institute, we have nominated one senior scientist as a nodal person who is going to look at the data sources, catalog the data sources which are available in that institute as well as in the regional institutes which are funded by ICMR. Second policy we are already developing. Data metadata standard, I'll come to the next slide, we have started a program. And then development of warehouse and then integrated research platform, will be focusing on that in the next thing. This is the last slide. And this is one of the very important program that we have started with the Indian Institute of Sciences, where I talked in the beginning that for developing AI ML applications, what we need is a reference gold standard data sets. So in our country, the challenge is, the engineering institutes and the medical institutes, they collaborate, but the data remains in silos, so that data cannot be used by other institutes for developing applications. So here what we are focusing only on developing standards and then collecting data according to those standards. This data will be available in a version controlled environment, and so that if you develop a program using version 1, and by the time somebody else develops similar AI ML program on similar problem, version 3 is available, version 1 is also available, so that that person can do a comparative evaluation. Second thing, there are a lot of applications which are coming up. So there is a need to develop a system for comparative evaluation of those applications which are developed by other parties. So these data sets will be projected as a national representative data sets where those applications can also be evaluated. So I think that is what I need to discuss with you, and thank you very much. So I'll be happy to take any questions, because young crowd always have a lot of questions. I'll be happy to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harpreet. Dr. Deva, can you take it now? Yeah.
So do you want to do it now or they? I can do it later.
Okay, thanks, Vasanth. So I'm a radiologist by profession. I have just some interest in AI, and that's the reason I'm here. And I cannot code or I cannot write a program or anything, but I understand broadly the concept of AI and how things work. So I'll start with how we started in our institute, maybe 3-4 years or before COVID. We started with something called radiomics and traditional machine learning algorithms. There was nothing but mining of large data. We have a huge number of data on our PAC servers, and we started mining those data in specific disease contexts. And by mining those data and extracting data from each and every image, you can do multiple calculations. There are something like first order radiomic features, second order and higher order radiomic features, and that's how we started. And when we are dealing with patients with renal tumor, renal cancer, by just looking at the tumor itself on MR or even CT scan, it is very difficult to say which type of renal cancer it is. There are multiple types of cancers in renal cancers, but it is difficult to say just by looking at the tumor which type of cancer is. Now, why that is important? Each type of cancer has its own prognosis. Prognosis is nothing but the outcome will be different in each of those tumors. So non-invasively, without taking a biopsy or without even doing a surgery, we by just using the CT scan and looking at the texture of the CT scan, the individual pixels and all, radiologists would not look at the pixels in that image. The radiologist would look at the macroscopic view of the image, whereas the computer can look at the pixel level data. It can look at the pattern, how these pixels are arranged and all those things. This is the basis of radiomics. And we could differentiate just from the CT scan data what type of cancer it is, and that is how we started. This is not a sophisticated AI, so to speak, like neural network or anything. This is just a simple usage of data available in the image. So we did similar, we persisted with a similar line of thought process, and again published few other papers, again in differentiating renal tumors from other tumors. Even that is sometimes very difficult on CT scan or MR. It's sometimes you need to sample those. You cannot say that this is, categorically say that this is tumor just based on imaging. But the radiomics features of those MR images were able to differentiate those things, which kept us encouraging. And this was another similar thought process in which we looked at tumors of bone, and we wanted to know whether this particular tumor will respond to chemotherapy or not. Chemotherapy is a very arduous thing, and it has multiple toxic effects. So why to wait for chemotherapy to act after 2-3 months and again assess whether this chemotherapy has helped the patient or not? Why not just after the first cycle of chemotherapy, maybe after 2-3 days, you can do the scanning. By that time, there won't be any macroscopic size reduction, but you can see the texture which is going to change. So we can pick up those textures and we can say that whether this particular texture change would reflect as a good outcome or a better outcome in this particular patient or not. So we can predict whether this patient is going to benefit from this chemotherapy or not. So if we can say that this patient is not going to benefit, probably would not, we would choose an alternate chemotherapy. So this is how we started, and later on during COVID, we moved on to something called convolutional neural network based things, and we had again a lot of X-rays with us, and this is done by one of my colleague, and we pulled all those data. We had the COVID positive or negative results also. So we trained the algorithm, and that particular algorithm was able to pick up those abnormalities in a very decent way. And in some of the cases, it also focused on the area of the heart. COVID has broadly nothing to do with the heart, but in some cases it persisted that there is some abnormality in the heart. We had no clue, but when we retrospectively looked at the data, all those patients had something. Sometimes COVID can affect heart also, but that was not the primary aim of our team to train the algorithm for. But as a collateral benefit, which the data learned, or the algorithm learned from the data that how to pick up cardiac abnormalities on those data set. So this was something surprising to us, that AI can do some things which are not expected from it, or primarily we are not expecting from it. So other few things which we are all working on is this one, nodule detection on a CT scan. This is going on for a very long time. There are multiple CADs, computer diagnosis or detection, which has been there for a very long time, but those algorithms are bad. I know either there are a lot of false positives or false negatives, so it was not optimized. So we wanted this kind of nodule detection for our own projects to see whether, for a different project. So we wanted to create an algorithm. So we trained that algorithm with multiple CT scan, annotated images, and after training, it was able to pick up even tiny nodules of this size. So which was, so once AI can do this, obviously there were some false negatives and false positives, but radiologists can have a cursory look and clean that, delete it, add more. So 90% of the job is already done. You are going to do that 10% job. So that makes it semi-automatic, but it is still saves a lot of time. So that's it about our things. We also did some work on pelvic fractures, which is still going on, and also rib fractures. We got good results on CT scan. We tried to pick up rib fractures in patients who underwent road traffic accidents, because rib fractures are generally missed unless you clearly look for it. So there are 2-3 applications we have. This is from a third-party vendor applications, which are we using in our department. This is one of those applications wherein we estimate a particular person's age based on the bone. We can see the bone and we can estimate the age of the patient. It's a very tedious process. It takes time. You need to compare it with multiple atlases to say whether this particular patient belongs to a particular age group. It takes 15-20 minutes of our time. So there is an algorithm available. You just have to upload it, and in 2-3 seconds, it will outline the entire bone. It will map it with the atlas and will give you the estimated age. So it makes it much faster. There is another tool which is available in our department now. Recently, we got it installed, which can read our chest X-rays, because we do some 700-800 X-rays in our department, which is impossible for us to see all those X-rays and report it. So we wanted a binary classification whether this is X-ray is normal or abnormal. If it is abnormal, that will be reported. If it is normal, the report will be directly sent to the patient. So for that purpose, we are using this, and we are very happy with this algorithm because it reduces our workload by at least 40-50%. And it integrates well with our existing recent packs. That's an additional advantage. And this is the last slide. This is currently we are not using it, but we are about to do it, which is again an AI-based algorithm which will clean the image. You know, when you try to reduce the radiation dose in children, especially if you want to reduce the radiation dose in kids for obvious reasons, the image quality is bad. It has a lot of noise in that, so the SNR goes down, and it is difficult to read and diagnose on those CT scans. But this particular algorithm takes that noise-rich images and does something and converts that into, it removes the, basically denoise it and gives you a better looking image like this. You know, this is very noisy, whereas this particular image is devoid of those noises. Similar example here. So what is the advantage of, what is the role of these kind of algorithms is that once you reduce the noise, you get good quality images. So there are two advantages. One is you can either have a better looking image, or you can reduce the radiation dose and go back to the original image. So you have that advantage of reducing the dose, which is very important when you are dealing with children. In pediatric patients, radiation dose is an important thing. And these are a few experiences which we personally have or developed in our department. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you. We'll hand it over to Vasanth again. Thank you.
Thank you, Deva. I have a couple of questions. I will do that after, during the discussion. Next up, Dr. Ambika Seth. I invite her to share her own experiences. She brings in a unique industry perspective to the discussion.
Hello, everyone. Next slide, please. Can I? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. So I'm working with Lunit, which is a medical AI company. And our main aim is to conquer cancer through AI. We are a first-generation medical AI company headquartered in Seoul, South Korea, with offices in Boston, Amsterdam, and Shanghai. Now, when we talk about AI, we see that there has been a lot of interest in AI in the past couple of years, and this has in part been due to the deep learning models that we currently have. With so many different AI technologies coming in, obviously we have a lot of AI competitions, and I just want to emphasize that our company has been rated as one of the top AI companies, even better than competitors such as Microsoft and Google. Some of the panelists talked about deployment and implementation, and that it is important to work with different vendors to make sure that the AI product works at your particular clinic. So I just want to emphasize here that we have partnerships with world-leading medical companies such as Fujifilm, GE Healthcare, Philips, Agfa, and Sectra. We have tested our product with all these different vendors, and this helps us in deploying in different hospital settings and with different customers. Also, we discussed that it is important to document the evidence that we have in healthcare. We should document the before and after with the new technology. We need to rigorously validate it and test it clinically. And this is where the strong clinical evidence that we have comes in. We have more than 10 full-time medical directors in our company who have helped in publishing more than 60 papers and abstracts in world-renowned journals that have high impact factors such as JAMA Oncology, The Lancet Digital Health. Moving on to how we conquer cancer, I would like to start with the problem statement. So this is something that was talked about in the previous sessions also, that when it comes to medical imaging, there is a high proportion of cases that are missed, and it can be to the tune of 30% cases that are missed as false positive or false negative. in the medical imaging field, we have a 30% annual growth in the volume because we have a rising population, more elderly people, more chronic diseases. That all leads to more imaging that's happening. However, the increase in doctors and radiologists is just 4% per annum. So you can see there is a clear-cut discrepancy between the need that we have and what we can support. How Lunit comes in here is basically we have two main broad categories. One is for the diagnosis and the other is for the treatment. For the diagnosis, we have Lunit Insight products that focus on chest and breast and help in diagnosis of cancer in the chest and breast. In addition to cancer detection, when we talk about our chest products, we also pick up infection, features of heart failure, and tuberculosis. Talking about the therapeutic part, we have Lunit Scope products that look at therapeutic biomarkers. And these biomarkers are an indicator to the response therapy, and they can help us judge whether a patient will respond to therapy or not. Now, moving on to the research that we do. So, Dr. Vasanth talked about the background for validation. And when we talk about validation for a data scientist versus a statistician versus validation for a clinical setting, they are all different. And they mean different things, right? And eventually, our aim is to validate our product in the actual clinical setting so that it can be used in the hospital. And we have sufficient evidence for that. Also, it is important to design the right study depending on the settings and the need of the various hospitals and the customer. And lastly, as Dr. Harpreet mentioned, there are a lot of new AI companies that are coming up and new AI software. So it's also important to compare them and see which is the best. So I am just going to share a couple of studies. I won't go into the detail because they are radiology studies, but I'll just share the context and why we did that particular study. So this was a study that was published in the Lancet Digital Health, and it was a retrospective study. Essentially, what this means is that we went back in time, we collected data with the appropriate ground truths, that is the gold standard, and we looked at the performance of the artificial intelligence on this particular data set. So you can see on the left side, 0.94, that is the standalone performance of the artificial intelligence for cancer detection on that particular data set. Then the next step would be to compare the performance of the AI with the human radiologist and the readers. This is important because up till now, we have radiologists who are reading these scans, but going forward, we want the AI to do that. And it is important to know whether the AI is good enough as compared to the radiologist or not. So this is something that we did. And also, for a sub-analysis, we looked at the different category of the radiologist because we know there are general radiologists and breast specialists. So if somebody who has to read a mammogram is a breast specialist versus a general radiologist, there will be some difference in performance. And we saw whether the AI can reduce these differences or not. This is especially important in areas that are, let's say, highly populated, underserved, remote areas where we don't have a lot of specialists and we have general physicians. We wanted to see if we added AI to the workflow, whether their performance would increase to the level of specialist or not. And actually it did. This study was published in JAMA Oncology, which is another high impact factor journal. And this looked at the comparison of 3 different AI algorithms that were commercially available. So as I mentioned, it is important to compare the AI solutions to look at which one suits the hospital setting. And the important thing is that it was an independent assessment that was not funded by any of the AI companies. So it was a completely unbiased view, and the results showed that out of the 3 companies, ours was the best performing. This is again a very interesting study. Now, from the past 2 studies, you have seen that we established that our product does really well as a standalone AI and also as compared to the different comparators. Now, the next step was to take the product to the clinical settings and the hospital. And when we discussed the results with the doctors, we wanted to show that the AI helps not just with increased detection of cancer, better performance of the radiologist, but it also helps with their workload. So this was a study that was conducted in Sweden, and in this essentially we showed that with the help of AI, there could be a 60% reduction in the workload of the doctors without missing any potential cancers. And hence, this was a really impactful study, more so because we know there is a huge shortage of clinicians all around the world, and especially experts such as radiologists. Moving on to the prospective trial. So when we talk about clinical validation, there are different study designs. Initially, we start with retrospective validation. That is, we go back in time, collect the data, collect the ground truths, and then look at the AI results. Then the next step is prospective deployment, because prospectively means deploying in the actual clinical setting. And this deployment is important as it simulates the clinical workflow. So this was a study that we did in a very large screening cohort in Sweden. And what we did with this study was, if you can see in the table, there are 2 readers, 1 and 2, that are marked. So the standard for mammography reading in Europe is 2 radiologists that separately and blindly read the mammograms. What we did in the study is we replaced one of them with the AI. That was one strategy. And the final strategy was using the AI alone. Then we looked at the cancer detection rate and other parameters. And finally, from this study, we could conclude that replacing one of the radiologists with the AI would be a safe, effective, and cost-efficient thing. Lastly, this is my last slide, and I think this is a very good slide because it shows how the clinical validation progresses from initial research to final clinical implementation. So you can see the first study in JAMA Oncology that I mentioned. This was done at the Swedish Institute, and they compared the 3 AI algorithms. As ours was the best performing, then this particular institute selected our algorithm to use in their prospective study that I just showed you. And finally, depending on the prospective study results, where they decided to replace one radiologist with the AI, they went in for a full clinical implementation. And right now, I'm really proud to say that our AI is being used clinically and has replaced one of the readers in the Swedish hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ambika. I'm not sure if, as radiologists, we should clap that they have replaced a reader, but good work. Finally, I would want to invite Dr. Rajiv. He will share the hospital administrator's perspective on the whole validation concept.
Thank you, Dr. Vasanth. Thank you very much, InnoHEALTH and IIIT, for giving me this opportunity to interact with all of you. My compliments to all of you who have stayed back, because you've stayed back for the best session. Shows your interest and deep commitment. Now, this is, Dr. Vasanth has already mentioned about my diverse experiences. So AFMC, AIMS, WHO Fellowship in Liverpool School, UK. And I have also done my international business management from IIFT. And my service career, 30 years with the Indian Air Force, out of which some time was in the Middle East, 4 years over there. I have worked with the Israeli forces. I have worked with Tata Trust to set up a 19-hospital cancer care setup in the state of Assam. And at the bottom, you see Praar, which is my consulting company, which is an embodiment of the experience of over the years. So what we're going to talk about in detail is clinical validation of artificial intelligence. But before that, what I see here is we have people on the panel from the supply side. We have Dr. Harpreet from the regulatory side and the research side, and I'm from the demand side, as a hospital administrator. What do I expect and what are my pain points in a hospital implementation. So what we see is that artificial intelligence is being rapidly integrated into healthcare with a naive belief in the objectivity of artificial intelligence. We think artificial intelligence is very neutral. It sits there and gives you a very impartial opinion, which I will show you it is not. Now, at this moment, I'm going to pause for a little bit, because what artificial intelligence is doing is fantastic, fantastic work. It's as close to miracles as possible in the modern world. And yet, we must have this thing at the back of our mind. What are the cautions that we should have in our mind? I was discussing before we ascended to the dais here, I was discussing with Dr. Devasenathipathy, yeah, right. I think I'm getting close to where you are. Dr. Yeah. So I was discussing with him how many X-rays does a radiologist see in a day. He says we've got so many things happening there, but roughly in an 8-hour shift, 60, 70 X-rays. If you remove distractions, maybe 150 X-rays, 200 X-rays in a day, a radiologist can see. The capability of artificial intelligence, 250 X-rays per second, it can analyze. And that's why when Dr. Vasanth said that 5 years back someone had said radiologists will be redundant, this is the kind of capability it has. And we got discussing, he says there are things that we sometimes miss, minor things we miss, but the AI has caught it. So this is the kind of capability that we are dealing with. And yet, I'm going to bring out a few things which say, let's be cautious about it. Objectivity, neutrality, I'll give you some examples. And then we have a complacent trust in the omniscience of computational knowledge. Omniscience means that we think artificial intelligence, the tool, the machine, the model, whatever you want to call it, it knows everything. Omniscience, it knows everything. There were 4 doctors in Kerala a few months back. They were going in a car and they were following Google Maps, artificial intelligence, and they ended up in a river. They were going shopping and they ended up in a river because Google auntie said turn left, and they turned left and they went off the road. Why did they turn left when Google auntie said that? Because we trust the AI tool. We do not have to be blind there. So use cases of AI in medicine, they are limited only by our imagination. We will be discussing a few of those as we go along. But my focus is ethics of medical practice, ethics of medical research, ethics of clinical practice. Now the 4 pillars of ethics, which were laid down by Beauchamp and Childress after the Second World War: beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, and autonomy. Beneficence means, obviously, when you go to a doctor, you want to get better. That's beneficence. Non-maleficence is, you go to a doctor, you don't want to come back worse than what you were earlier. First, do no harm. This is an ancient principle in the practice of medicine, whether it is Charak or Sushruta or Hippocrates, they've all said this thing. You can go back even further into Babylonian tablets also. They have said the first duty of the physician is not to do any harm to the patient. And then we come to justice. Is everyone getting access? We spoke about that. Is it available? Is AI going to deny some treatment to some segment of the population? Is it going to treat everyone equally? And I'll show you it does not. And finally, autonomy. Autonomy means, do I have control over the decisions that are happening, the actions that are being taken towards me? Do I have control over that? Now, this is a place where even the doctors are puzzled, because if they do not follow the recommendation of the AI, they will be held accountable. AI was saying, do this thing, but the doctor overruled it. In a legal context, that can be very, very dangerous for the doctor. We need to be very cautious of this thing. And then we come to the data that's being collected. Whatever data we are collecting, do we have the patient's consent for using that data? That's part of the informed consent, which is part of autonomy. When we take the consent of the patient for doing an X-ray or doing an ultrasound or doing a biopsy, did we tell him that your data could be used for building a tool? I think the most famous case here is, what are that cells? The cancer, HeLa cells. The descendants of HeLa, they took the people to court because they said, you never told us that these cells will be used for culture, HeLa cells. It's a wonderful judgment to read. I think I've got 2 minutes. I'll give you 4 examples in this thing. One, this is a study from the Alan Turing Institute. Alan Turing is the father, the grandfather, godfather of artificial intelligence. The institute took up 2,212 COVID models which had come up in the first phase, and they analyzed, they did a systematic review, and their conclusion was that none of the models had any potential use. They were already out in the market. This is when a tool is subjected to rigorous examination by the specialists in that field. Commonly used sepsis model, I was discussing with someone earlier. EPIC sepsis model is used in USA, widely used over there in hospitals. It was found in a retrospective study that 2/3 of the patients who developed sepsis were not identified by the model, by the AI tool. This study, the retrospective study, has come out as late as August this year. Now, this is another fantastic thing, and this is where we'll be discussing validation. This is something called clever hands phenomenon which takes place. In Mount Sinai Hospital, USA, they did chest x-rays on ICU patients to show the acuity, the severity of the condition. And when they tried to use it on other patients outside the hospital, they found that the model failed. It was excellent during the... And what they found was, the model was not even examining what were the features in the X-ray. It was just identifying which machine was used to take the X-ray. That's called metadata. This is called clever hands phenomenon. Time permitting, I will tell you the story of clever hands. And finally, women's heart attack symptoms. This was reported in the BMJ, an app for diagnosing, the smartwatches that you wear. When it saw the symptoms in a woman, it said she's having a panic attack. When it saw the same symptoms in a man, it said he is having a heart attack. She was also having a heart attack. So gender bias, we need to be cautious about this as well. I'll discuss this thing in more details further. And finally, my concluding slide, this is Cluster and Smaden. These are BAPs of biostatistics. They say there is no such thing as a validated prediction model. Now, you know AI is based on algorithms and models. We'll discuss this thing as well during our panel discussions. I'll stop here. This is some of these things I have published in my paper here, which came out in the Journal of Healthcare Management Standards, Artificial Intelligence and the Myth of Objectivity. You may like to look it up, but I'll be happy to take on questions and discuss things further. Thank you very much. And sorry, I exceeded the time by 30 seconds.
Can you hear me? Am I loud enough? Very interesting round of questions. So we have 34 minutes left, and I know there are no audience questions. I'll just do a brief round of minutes.
Mic
or so
देख,
for
mic.
each of the panelists. and then we take audience questions, right? I want to start with Ambika here. So, Ambika, interestingly, Lunit has a chest X-ray product and cancer solution. You have a professor in radiology in AIMS using your competitor's chest X-ray solution. And then there is, experienced health administrator who has set up 19 cancer hospitals in Assam, right? So do you want to kind of talk a little bit about your personal journey in choosing Lunit as a company you want to work with? Being a radiologist, you had the entire world open. I don't think there are many radiologists working for AI companies. We want to touch upon that and then pitch your solution to both of the panelists here. The deal is
Thanks, Vasanth. So, I think I wouldn't ideally pitch my solution. I would let the solution speak for itself. And I believe that Cure is popular in India because they have been trained and validated specifically on an Indian population. And they have the advantage of the home ground, whereas our company is based out of Seoul. However, I would just like to mention that when we trained our AI, we used a really diverse data set, not just from South Korea, but also US, UK, other Asian countries. So I think it would be good to do a head-to-head comparison on that data set, and then I will let them decide on their own what they want to choose.
perfect segue. So we are a platform. We have both the options available on our platform. Coming to Deva, the expectations around technology is, I would say, unfair, right? So humans can fail, but people think that technology shouldn't fail. Practically, that's not going to happen. When you validate, right, when do you think that enough is enough? This is my benchmark for accepting a solution for my clinical practice. So what is your criteria for choosing that benchmark? And what are the challenges, in fact, in bringing us, a new age tech solution like based on CNN, which are typically suited to work on cloud and integrate with your probably legacy systems. I know that you have changed your systems, but at most sites they still run on legacy PAC systems. What are those challenges? If you can address both these points, that will be good.
Yeah. So let me take the second point first. Obviously, we are dealing with legacy systems in our institute. As this size and complexity, there would be some areas which is handled by legacy systems. And that was one of the issues which we also encountered when we were trying to integrate this with the AI solutions. First, the existing PACS was a closed system. We were not able to integrate that with that particular PACS system. And over a period of time, we changed over to a different PACS system, which was able to integrate with the product we have. And what is the difference it made was that with the earlier solution, both were running parallel. You want to see the PACS, you have the work list here. If you want to see the AI solution or the output of the AI, you need to open a different window or a different computer or a different network and look at that. It's not going to work. Unless it is seamlessly integrated into your own work list, it's not going to work. Whereas in the new system, we have a better system which is more open, and in that, nowadays for a radiologist, the work list is the home page. You go to the work list, start there, do the work, finish it off and get out. So unless your AI does something and integrates with the work list, I don't think it is seamless. You cannot go and open a different app, open a different computer. It's not going to work. For example, if the AI reads our X-ray, it should label it as provisionally read as normal, or it can self-populate the report also. It happens in our system. It populates a report. If it is a normal X-ray, it will populate a normal report. It's up to the radiologist to see the report and approve it. So unless it is integrated, we cannot get rid of those legacy systems as fast as we like to do it, but it is a problem. Unless it is integrated, it's very difficult for the radiologist to use, especially in a busy hospital. No one has the time to spend that extra minutes to open a different app and do it. And the second point is, how would you validate? How would you choose the benchmark that, it has reached this level and that is enough for me. It's difficult to judge or guess that point or sweet spot what we need, but what we did in our example is that we wanted a binary classification, which is not a very big thing. We are normals and abnormals. The purpose why we could have opted for a even higher standard. We need a proper report for everything. We need to describe the abnormality, pick up the abnormality, but we also thought we are an academic institution. So if we let our cases all reported by an AI, what would our resident learn? I mean, they will not learn anything. So we have to, balance between this academic need and this workflow need. So we chose something hybrid or embedded model where we just wanted to reduce our workload, but by not just looking at those normal X-rays. So that way we could reduce our workload by 50% or 40%. So that was a choice. So for this, for a binary classification of a normal and abnormal, I mean, any AI in this era of sophistication would easily reach that benchmark. But when we are doing it, we also did this back-end clinical validation. We used some 300 X-rays and we ran the algorithm. It did pretty good, and there are only 10 or 15 false positives or false negatives, which again we looked at those the findings which it missed or it overcalled. They were very subtle findings. It's okay even if we had missed that. And the same findings when we matched with our radiologist findings, we had two radiologists reading the same X-ray, which was matched with the AI's findings. Even there was some confusion between two human radiologists. So it is, I mean, depending on your need, if you want to use that as screening modality, you need a high negative predictive value. Or, I mean, you have to adjust for your own need. That's what I would...
Yeah, Dr. Deva, I would just like to say that our product has like seamless integration and all these features. So probably you can consider. And also you talked about radiology residents and their training, right? So we believe that going forward with so much of AI coming in, there might be a role of AI as well in training the residents wherein they can have a visual impression and then learn from that. So this is also something we are working on.
Perfect, thank you. I also liked how you said human radiologist. So there is already an AI radiologist coming up subconsciously, right? Moving forward to Dr. Rajiv. So Dr. Rajiv, you have heard about the performance benchmarking and the solution. Now you have run cancer hospitals. Will you sign a check for an AI solution which can automatically read, say, mammograms and produce normal or abnormal reports? When will you pay for that solution? When will you sign that check for them? What needs to be met?
Right, I think that's a very, very important question. When will you buy the apple, right? Does the apple appeal to me? Is it meeting my requirements? So the first thing is it actually addressing a real problem? Now, Dr. Deva brought out beautifully, very eloquently. The problem is huge workload, don't have enough manpower, repetitive tasks which we needed to handle, a simple binary, and they identified a product which met the requirement. Fantastic. Yeah. I want to take the audience away from radiology a little bit, because the most fantastic solutions in AI have come in radiology and cancer screening, right? Let's look at something else. A company in US is using AI for appointment booking for MRIs. Why? Because there are people who drop out at the last minute and those slots are wasted. So they said, let's go to market and see what's there. They said, airlines are already doing something called overbooking. So if you have 100 seats, they will book 110, because we know that some people will drop out, change of travel plan, whatever reasons will be there. So seats don't go vacant. They applied that model and they had a fantastic reduction in waiting period for MRIs in the hospital. The waiting period in that hospital used to be 7 days, it became 2 days. Isn't that fantastic? A very simple application. People are lost to follow up. Hospitals are using this thing. Loss to follow up has two major problems for me. One, if the treatment is not completed, let's say a case of tuberculosis, that becomes multi-drug resistant tuberculosis because he's lost to follow up. And second, if I'm a private player, there's loss of revenue. If the patient is not coming back to me, there's loss of revenue. I use this thing to identify people who are likely to drop out, and I focus my energies on those people. Similarly, there are multiple options. So A, do you have a need? What is the need? Define your need. In the US, one of the biggest drain on healthcare insurance is elderly people falling, because they fall and that leads to hospitalization, prolonged rehabilitation. They've used AI tools to identify such patients, focus on them. They've saved more than $50 billion on just prevention of falls. Look at the different dimensions which are possible. The second thing after the need that I will see is the clinical effectiveness. Is it really effective? And that's where is the proof of the pudding, in the tasting. That's where the clinical validation comes in, which all of you have spoken about at length. And then we go on to how much effort do I have to put in for implementing it. What is my direct cost? What are my indirect costs? What are my direct benefits? What are my indirect benefits? If time permits, I can speak a little about it, or we can move on.
We are kind of closing. I want to ask one important question to Dr. Harpreet, maybe come back.
Right.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, correct.
How to adopt the technologies by addressing the
That's exactly kind of we are going to move on. So they say that man proposes, AI predicts, God disposes. The governance and regulatory bodies are there governing over everything, right? You make any model, you claim anything, but they have to approve it, right? So, correct. Just a minute. So we'll close it. We will open it after InnoHEALTH speaks for the audience. So I want Dr. Harpreet to briefly talk about the framework that I know ICMR is working on, the HTA-IN framework, the Health Technology Assessment Framework, and how it is going to impact all the health technologies that will be used in Indian hospitals. So yeah, I will.
Yeah, so I would start by saying that HTA is not just a framework. It's a program which is being run by Department of Health Research, which is the parent body of ICMR. In fact, both ICMR and DH are inseparable, but this program is run by Department of Health Research. This program is, if most of you may not be knowing, so if you have 10 technologies to do a job, then which technology you are going to select? Say for example, blood sugar. If there are 10 different instruments, equipments, devices which are available, which one to choose from? So this program was started to look at the effectiveness, cost effectiveness, acceptance, and various other parameters related to technologies, and then come up with a proposal or come up with the evidence suggestion to the government that this technology is most effective. That is called Health Technology Assessment Program. So how it is doing? There are some 20 identified nodal regional centers, and then once a problem is identified, when the technology's proposal is submitted, then one of the regional center or regional hubs is initiated. They invoke spokes, and then a large-scale program is initiated to capture data related to all these aspects. So one of the caveat here is we are looking at AI. This HTA program focuses mainly on the devices, medical technologies, but the AI component till now it is, I would say, not there, but it's very weak. It's very weak. So that is where we at ICMR have started complementing this. So this program, ISC program, this gold standard dataset program is actually going to complement the HTA in terms of evaluating AI related products. Second aspect that we are looking at is we have also developed ethical guidelines for artificial, where there is a component, entire chapter on validation of AI-based products. So we are trying to complement the HTA program. Right now it is doing great, but AI component is weak, we are going to complement that. Yeah.
I think an audience, please.
Thank you. Hello, Dr. Harpreet Singh. I'm Manini Puranik. I'm a technical architect. I've been building data systems for over 18 years now. And initially in the manufacturing and retail space, they've really pioneered how to consolidate data. And now I'm turning my eyes to healthcare. So I have a tech company. We're working on data platforms for healthcare companies. Your session was extremely insightful, simply because you used those terms which are very complex and you made it really simple for people to understand. And I understand that you're facing those challenges which you face when you're working with data on scale, especially when it's, and you mentioned you've accessibility, availability, quality of data. You also mentioned golden data sets right now and before. And these, all of them kind of, connect to master data systems, which I've been building for years now. So my question was, how do you define golden data sets in healthcare, especially in the ICMR setup? And secondly, in manufacturing and retail, they came up with GS1. We look at GS1 as a G10 provider. That's not what it is. That's what you see in the front for the barcodes. Behind the scenes, it basically connects all manufacturers, suppliers to exchange. It's an exchange of data. And that is one of the challenges you talked about. So is there a plan to build something like GS1 for your medical research data also? That's the second question. So golden records and GS1.
Both are actually linked. They're not very different. So regarding golden data sets, we are trying to develop these golden data sets by defining the parameters and specifications associated with that golden data set. Those specifications will be both in terms of say for example, if you're looking at image, the resolution, the machine, how often the lenses are changed and all those kind of parameters, and then metadata, associated metadata. So in fact, ISC has shared us a document of specifications, generalized specifications. They are calling it as ontologies, and for these gold standard data sets. So we are reviewing that document, and very soon we are going to come up with the ontologies for image-based data sets. So similarly for other data sets, these kind of standard ontologies will come. If they are existing at internationally, we'll adopt that. But if they are not, then we'll develop our own. So this is how we are trying to achieve the gold standard data sets. And whatever, it's not just that we are just funding the hubs. This entire project is going to be executed as a hub and spoke model. So hub is a disease specific institute, and then that particular hub associates with itself spokes. So there are 5 hubs that we have already funded. One is on cervix cancer, second is on oral cancer, third is on chest TB X-rays, fourth one is on dural lesions. This is particularly related to brain tumor, because there is lot of need for predicting the vascularization of brain tumor, so that brain tumor can be operated equally. And then there are other hubs. And then there are many hubs which are coming voluntarily. We are calling them as honorary hubs. So we'll put them inclusion-exclusion criteria based on the specifications. If all those images and data sets confine to those inclusion-exclusion criteria, we take them on board. So this is how we are trying to achieve this. And regarding your second part, the specifications, we do plan, but the thing is, if they are already available, we'll not reinvent the wheel. If they are not available, then we'll propose from the ICMR side as well as from the DHR side. Yeah.
Thank you. I think, Shinta? Yeah, go ahead. You are the boss. Yeah.
That's some of the work from the PhD students sitting back there, Akshaya, which basically shows that a lot of research data that gets deposited as FAIR, only 2% is actually interoperable. So the GS1 standards, we are working on it, so would like to propose that as a as a possibility going forward, if any one of you are interested. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to close this session. We have well past the time. I think the email IDs of all the panelists will be available. Anyone has any questions, just feel free to drop the email. And thank you for staying back. So many people had stayed back, and I'm sure we didn't disappoint you. Thank you so much, you for taking time out. Evening.
Thank you so much. We have recently scratched the surface of what promises to be a fascinating and an exciting discussion. We will now be starting with our felicitation ceremony. I request Dr. Vasanth Venugopal to felicitate the speakers, starting off with Dr. Rajiv Pathni. Please give him a round of applause. Next off, we have Dr. Harpreet Singh, Scientist and Chief Data Officer, Indian Council of Medical Research. Next off, Dr. Devasenathipathy Kandasamy, Professor, All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Next off, Dr. Ambika Seth, MD Radiology, Medical Director, Cancer Screening Group Lunit. May I kindly now request Professor Venkat, IIM Lucknow, to kindly felicitate Dr. Vasanth Venugopal. Please welcome him with a huge round of applause. This session is now to an end, and I can rightly quote that AI is not a substitute for human intelligence. Rather, it is a tool to amplify human creativity and ingenuity. Thank you very much for being with us today. We have come to the conclusion for today's session, but we will meet you tomorrow, and please be all here by 9 a.m. sharp. Actually be here by 8:45. I think 8:45 would be a much better day because you would all be coming by 9 a.m. So I request you all to please be here by 8:45 a.m. sharp so that we can start our session on time and yes, end it on time. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. Thank you so much.